Racing is like a lot of other sports where things can happen that generate discussion, debate and controversy, and this channel likes to visit all of that controversial stuff because when you do the research it brings up a lot of different stuff. This guy said this guy did this, and this happened that makes you think differently about that thing that you might have already thought about, if that makes any sense. In fact, it was a video on the whole Option 13 thing in 1994 that caused this channel to blow up in the first place. It was interesting to go through all of that, and it became a lot more clear-cut than someone thought this team was cheating and had no proof, because Charlie Whiting's report was available to read in full online, and other bits and pieces added up, including the fact that other teams were being told to remove those fuel filters. I guess it's because the controversial stuff sells, and in football there's been a lot of that recently. Luis Diaz's offside that wasn't offside against Tottenham a few weeks back, the Newcastle goal last weekend that proved that people on the internet don't understand how a sphere functions, and Marcus Rashford's red card against Copenhagen the other night. Or just VAR in football in general. But while I mostly talk about Formula 1 related controversies, there was one that happened in the World Rally Championship back in 2002. The WRC game, it has to be said, has opened up some old memories for me. The WRC channel has been throwing up some classic stuff that I've been watching back most nights, and those videos are giving me memories of all those drivers who were just the coolest at that time. Reigning world champion and childhood favourite Richard Burns had moved from Subaru to Peugeot, and his replacement was four-time champion Tommy Makinen, who had come from Mitsubishi. Burns was partnered with 2000 champion Marcus Gronholm, who had enjoyed a successful end to the 2001 season by winning the Rally GB, and Peugeot was going into 2002 with a lot of confidence. The 206 had been decent in 2001, but reliability kept letting the team down. Gronholm's title defence would net him a lowly fourth in the standings behind Burns, McRae and Makinen, but by the end of that 2001 season the majority of the problems were behind them. Peugeot also had two refugees resulting from Seat's withdrawal in Didier Auriol, who won the title in 1994, and Harry Rovanperä. Now, Rovanperä's driving in the season finale had the commentators on the WRC saying that he would likely be a champion of the future. Rovanperä won one rally in his entire career. His son, on the other hand, what a driver. Best in the world contender, along with Shane van Gisbergen. At least, I think so anyway. And also, as a fun fact, my first car was a Peugeot 206. Not because of Burnsy, but because it could easily carry 48 inches of speakers and a 50-watt loud boy in it. Translation: that thing. Meanwhile, over at Ford it was business as usual. Carlos Sainz and Colin McRae the two main drivers, with a third car for Marco Martin and his co-driver, the late Michael Park. Also on the entry list were Francois Duval, Mark Higgins, who was also touted as being a star of the future by the WRC reviews, Armin Kremer and Jan Tuohino. With Makinen gone for Mitsubishi, their lineup was Frenchman Francois Delacour and Colin's brother Alistair, with Yanni Passanen doing a few rounds too. In all, there were 7 factory-entered teams that season, as opposed to the 3 that there are now. Peugeot, Ford, Mitsubishi, Subaru, Skoda, Hyundai and Citroen. And Citroen had a secret weapon up their sleeve, a 27-year-old former gymnast from near Strasbourg. In 1995, Sebastien Loeb had quit his job as an electrical engineer and moved into racing, and while racing in Citroen Saxos he met Guy Freckelin of Citroen, who moved him into the Junior World Rally Championship for its inaugural season in 2001. He won all but one round of that season, that round being in San Remo, and that was only because he was in a full-on WRC spec Citroen Zara, where he finished second overall on his first attempt. So second overall at the first attempt, against the likes of McRae, Burns, Makinen, Gronholm, Auriol, Solberg. It's a bit like a 27-year-old coming into Formula 1 in, say, 2011, and immediately managing to dump time on Hamilton, Alonso, Button, Raikkonen, Vettel, and Schumacher. Loeb was moved up to the top gig for 2002, although Citroen would only be part-time for this year, and in the opening stages of the rally it was almost game over immediately for Burns as he caught a bump wrong and slid down the side of the road. Luckily he ended up on a gravel track below and was able to get going again, only losing 15 seconds, and the contents of his bowels. McRae meanwhile was actually taking things easy. He hated the Monte Carlo rally and there didn't look to be too much confidence in the car either. Stacking it so soon with nothing to play for when Ford and McRae needed something after the end of the previous year would be suboptimal to say the least. The top 3 from the first stage were all Pirelli runners. Back then Michelin and Pirelli were the tyre suppliers, with Ford and Subaru on Pirelli and Citroen, Mitsubishi and Peugeot on Michelin's. The Pirellis seemed to be doing the business on this occasion, with Sainz taking the stage victory and Makinen being less than a second behind. A second on a stage that was something like 25 kilometres long. It's nothing. Solberg was far down because he stalled on the line and then had an off a bit further along. Stage 2 had to be cancelled due to safety concerns, too many people standing in the wrong places and too many people in general lining the route. On Stage 3, Solberg set the fastest time with Makinen and McRae tying for second with exactly the same time over a 28km course. This put Makinen into the overall lead and Sainz dropped to third overall because he lost power steering, which, at Monte Carlo, yeah, it's not fun. It's not like he lost power steering just before Citroen that's 23 miles long and got loads of hairpins. The next stage was Citroen that was 23 miles long and had loads of hairpins. Loeb went and beat Makinen, who had finished that stage in 5th, by 23 seconds, and Loeb was 18 seconds faster than Gronholm in second place, and Loeb would take over the lead of the rally by just over 5 seconds, leaping him from 5th up to 1st. Loeb would then dump 17 seconds on the second fastest car by the end of stage 5, which took place through the dead of night in the pitch black. His lead over Makinen by the end of stage 5 was well over half a minute. On the first stage of day 2, Rovanperä was out after he smacked into something solid, and one of the Skodas was very lucky to not go over the edge and down a steep drop. Like Bernsey on day 1, the Skoda driver and his co-driver would also need a change of underwear. At the end of leg 2, Loeb's lead would still be around the 35-second mark, but then the Citroen was hit with a 2-minute time penalty for something that one of the Subaru team members had spotted. That team member was George Donaldson, who was quite high up in the Subaru team, and he'd been through the Parc Fermé area, which was actually in the city of Monte Carlo, and noticed that everybody had shredded tyres. McRae's were shredded, but then again, it's Colin McRae. But so were Bernsey's, and Bernsey was the complete opposite to Colin McRae. Gronholm's were shredded, Makinen's were shredded, Solberg's, Sainz's, shredded. But then he got to Loeb's car, and Loeb's tyres were brand new. Changing your tyres under the rules was only allowed at service stops that were 20 minutes long, or if you got a puncture on one of the stages. At service stops that were 10 minutes long, you just had to do the work that you could get done in that 10 minutes and couldn't change tyres. What I assume happened is that Citroen arrived at the service, changed the tyres, and then sent them into Parc Fermé for the evening, with the next service available being 45 minutes at 7:30 the next morning, where I think they could have changed the tyres. If not, they just had to do it after stage 13 instead. It's one of the two. The rules said 20 minutes. It doesn't say 20 minutes or more, if you follow me. They'd been asking for permission for a tyre change facility in Monte Carlo after the final leg, Donaldson said on Dirtfish's podcast, and they'd kept asking. I'm guessing at some point Citroen just said, oh, we'll just change them now instead of changing them tomorrow morning, but I can't find anything to suggest why they actually did it. Nobody really knows, but someone out there must know. I don't think Citroen were intentionally trying to cheat. Subaru went and grassed on Citroen, and the stewards hit the Citroen team with a 2-minute time penalty for Loeb's car. And everybody was hanging around and they didn't see this penalty be put up on any official notice boards. And they kept on waiting, and they kept on waiting, and they kept on waiting. When it finally did go up, it had the word suspended next to it, because Citroen had appealed, and while it's under appeal, that penalty isn't even applied. So Makinen, with this penalty applied, would have had a lead just under 90 seconds, so he started to take things a little slower. In the minds of him and Subaru, they were thinking, well, there's no way they will overturn that penalty. It's clear as day they've broken the rules. This is going to stick. But the matter should have been settled by the end of Sunday, the 20th of January 2002, which was the final day of the rally. But it wasn't sorted. And this was supposed to be a bigger deal than a simple penalty for Sebastien Loeb. Makinen had won the Monte Carlo Rally the last 3 years on the bounce for Mitsubishi, and nobody had ever won 4 Montes in a row. Others had won 4 before, like Walter Roll, Sandro Munari and Jean Trevo, but none had done it in a row. The closest to doing so, according to the winner list I've looked at, is Roll. He won it in 1980 and then won 3 in a row from 82 to 85. Munari won in 72 and then 3 in a row starting in 75. It has to be said here that Trevo's wins are not part of the WRC, and neither was Munari's 1972 victory. Makinen could have overturned that 35-second lead if he wanted to, but he just drove casually, thinking that that penalty was eventually going to be applied. But it wasn't. So when the cars finished at the end of that Sunday, Makinen had to stand on the podium with gritted teeth as Loeb received his winner's trophy from Prince Albert. The French man in the French car had won the rally that had taken place entirely within France, which then raised some eyebrows, because a similar thing had happened before. In 1966, the authorities at the Monte Carlo Rally disqualified the 3 Minis that were on the podium, and a 4th car for a lighting irregularity that they'd apparently known about for 2 days. done, allegedly, to get a French car onto the podium because the top 4 cars were all British, and that didn't look good on the French at all, but that's a story for another day. Makinen, who was always calm and cool, was absolutely livid. He knew he'd won the event, and Citroen celebrated. They even took out an advert in the next edition of L'Equipe to brag about it. But 2 days after that advert was taken out, the results changed. Citroen had withdrawn the appeal, and Makinen was now the winner. He'd got his 4 Monte Carlo rally wins in a row, but the achievement wasn't what it should have been. As such, the results show that Makinen won the rally and that Loeb was second. But the overall season would be Gronholm's and Peugeot's, as Gronholm would dominate the season in a similar fashion to how Schumacher did it in the same year in Formula 1. Okay, Gronholm didn't take anywhere near as many wins as Michael did, but to finish the season with a 40-point gap over Solberg, that's a good effort. But the 2002 Monte Carlo rally was sort of a foreshadowing of what was about to happen. Loeb may have been penalised, but from stage 4 to his penalty at the end of stage 10, he led the rally with a comfortable gap of at least 30 seconds to the next car, and absolutely stomping on the likes of Makinen, Solberg, Sainz, reigning champion Burns, McRae, and other legends. Loeb won 5 stages of the rally, the same amount as Solberg, while Makinen would only win 3. Sainz took the first stage. Loeb, starting in 2004, would begin his domination of the WRC. He would win a total of 8 Monte Carlo rallies, but unlike Makinen, he couldn't win 4 in a row. Sebastien Loeb would win 6 in a row. Loeb would also win 9 WRC titles in a row between 2004 and 2012. He has the most rally wins and a plethora of other records. While justice prevailed and Makinen won the rally, Loeb could have won it too. Comfortably. And that's scary given, well, the calibre of drivers that he was up against at that time. So then, a look at the controversial 2002 Monte Carlo rally. If this video has taught you something, then please like it so the algorithm can do algorithmy things, and subscribe with the bell on so you never miss out on anything else I do around here. Massive thanks as ever to the kind folk at Patreon who support the channel at a more personal level, and if you want to help out with the image buying fund, as they can get a bit pricey, there is a link to Patreon in the description, along with links to Discord, socials, and other bits and pieces. Or the super thanks if you just want to do a one and done donation, and memberships are available if you want to be a bit more overt in your support. So until next time, I've been AdmiralLaWind, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.